So now that we have a functional, or at least we think it's functional, broker microservice ready to go, the next step is to put it up into a Docker image and run it. Now there's a couple of ways of doing this, and I'm going to show you two ways. The first way is the multi-stage build using a certified Go Docker image, and the second way is much faster. But we'll start with the multi-stage build, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to want to have a Docker Compose file that will run all of my microservices. And one of the irritating things about Visual Studio Code is when I'm in a workspace like this, I have my front-end folder, I have my broker service folder. I'd like to have right beside these at the same level a Docker Compose. But Visual Studio Code only lets me add folders, not files, to a workspace, at least as far as I know. So I'm going to go back to my Finder. And in the folder where those two folders exist, I'll create a new one, and I'll just call it Project. And that's where I'm going to put my make file eventually, and my Docker Compose file as well. So back to Visual Studio Code, I will say add a folder to the workspace, and I'll choose the project folder I just created. Okay. Now inside of that is where I'm going to put my Docker Compose. But, of course, Docker Compose needs something to run, and that means a Docker file. So let's go open our broker service folder and create a new file in there. And I'm going to call this broker-service.docker file, like that. Okay? And this will be the Docker file that tells Docker Compose how to build the image. So we're going to do it this way to start with. We'll get the base Go image. Okay? So I'll say from, and the image I want is called Golang, and then a colon, and then 1.18-alpine. And make sure you spell this right. And I'm going to give this an alias as builder. We're going to build our code in this image, and then build a smaller image, okay? So the next step is to run a command. And I'm going to run the command makedir, and this is on the Docker image we're building, /app. And next, I'll copy everything from the current folder, so dot, into the folder I just created in that Docker image. And now I'll set my working directory. And the command for that in a Docker file is workdir/app. So we're going to be doing everything in that directory. Now I just build my Go code. So I'll run the command, and I'm going to add an environment variable, cgo_enabled equals 0. I'm not using any C libraries, just use the standard library. And then it's the standard go build command, go build-o, and I'm going to call my application broker app. And I'm building it from ./cmd/API, just like you would, not Alpine, API, just like you would from the command line. So we have that ready to go. And because I'm not an optimist, even though I probably don't have to do this, I'm going to run the chmod command and add the executable flag to app/broker app. Okay, just to make sure it's executable. And the next step is to build a tiny Docker image. And we do that by saying from, and the smallest one I can find is alpine:\latest. And again, make sure you spell it right. I'm going to run, again, makedir/app, but this is on a new Docker image, okay, a very small one. And now I'll copy from builder, from equals builder, which I named right up there in line 2 from the first Docker image we're building, /app/broker app, and I'm going to copy it to /app. And then I just have the command to run. cmd in square brackets, and then in quotes, /app/broker app. Okay? So that, when I run this, should first of all build all of my code on one Docker image, and then create a much smaller Docker image and just copy over the executable. And that's exactly what I want. Okay? Now to make this run, inside that project folder I just created, I'm going to create a new file, and it must be named docker-compose.yml. Okay? And this is dead simple. First of all, what version am I using? Well, version, and then in single quotes, 3. And pay attention to the tabs in a YML file or nothing will work. And then I have the keyword services with a colon, and then I hit return, and then tab in. Actually, I'll give it a blank line. Tab in, make sure you get that one tab and only one tab, broker-service, which is the name I'm giving for this service, hit return, tab in, build, hit return, tab in, and then you give it the context. And because we have to do this using a project folder with a Docker Compose file inside of it that's beside the one I want to build, I have to set the context this way. Context : / up one level, then a slash, then broker - service. And make sure that exactly matches the name of the folder where you have your broker source code. Okay? Hit return. Do not hit tab this time. At the same level as context, Dockerfile : and that's dot, the current directory, / up one directory, / broker - service, / and then the name of your Docker file. And mine is called broker - service.docker file. Okay? And hit return. And then go back one. So at the same level as build, I'll say restart, : always. Always restart this. If it dies for some reason, try to start it up again. Now, what ports does it listen on? Well, if you recall, our Docker service actually listens on port 80, but my front end is using port 80. So instead, I'll tab in once, hit a single dash, then a space, then in double quotes, map port 8080 on my localhost to port 80 on the Docker image. And that will mean that I should be able to hit the broker service on port 8080 from my front end. And hit return and backspace once to get to the same level as ports and type deploy and hit return and tab in once. I'm going to say mode replicated, which I don't have to do, but I want you to get in the habit of doing this because we'll be using it later on. Replicated, and then one more return, and then replicas 1. Now in this case, we're only ever allowed to have one replica because we can't listen to with two Docker images on port 8080 on the local host. But later on, when we implement service discovery, we'll be replicating some of our Docker images. So you may as well get used to typing this sort of thing right now. Now, if everything went according to plan, I should be able to open my terminal, make sure you're in the right folder, the project folder. So if I'm up here, for example, and I'm inside the broker-service folder, I type pwd on a Mac or Linux, and there's probably something similar on Windows, but I can't recall what it is right now. I'm in the wrong folder. So I'll go up one level, and then I'll go into project. Okay? Now I'm in the right folder, because this is where my Docker Compose file lives. And to make it run, I'm going to type docker-compose up, and then -d to run it in the background. Now I'm going to run this, and it'll probably go very quickly, because chances are I have the Docker images I have in my Docker file already downloaded. You might have to wait a while it downloads it, but I'll hit return. And there, it appears to be running. Now, obviously, you're going to wait a little bit the very first time you run this while it downloads those two Alpine images, the one with the Go build tools and then the tiny one. But once it's going, you should be able to look at your Docker dashboard and see that you actually have this project running. My project is called project, and I have project-broker-service running. And if I click on it once, I should see there's my log file. So it's running in Docker in the background. Perfect. So the next step is to leave that running and go back to our front end and add some logic in the HTML template that allows me to hit that broker service, just to make sure that the two can talk to one another. And we'll get started on that in the next lecture.